Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Oscar prediction update for the month of November. Now, as of right now, I don't know whether or not I'm going to do a December one. It usually gets tricky around this time of year because December is like right when that Oscar prediction video would go up would be right before the Golden Globe nominations, and then January is just a whole mixed bag because the further and further we get into the season, then the harder it is to really judge because things are changing practically on a daily basis, and it's really difficult to keep track of everything. Um, and it is interesting going into this month's round of predictions because I feel like we're just on the precipice of some very big changes, and there have been some small changes since last month, but not as many as you might expect. And I did a whole thing where I made a giant list of every single movie in the conversation, and I whittled it down slowly, and I thought over it for hours, and I did all of this without even looking at last month's predictions. And then by the time I got done, I compared my current predictions to last month's predictions, and some things had not changed at all. I was like, well, I just did a lot of work to find out that my opinion has not changed. But there are some categories where my opinion has changed just a little bit, and I do want to start first and foremost with Best Documentary Feature. So not a whole lot of big changes. There are some new documentaries that I've heard of, like American Symphony or Four Daughters. I cannot believe that the poster for Four Daughters has three daughters on it. Who was in charge of making that poster? But outside of that, yeah, there are some interesting stuff in here. 20 Days in Maripol, I think that could be a slight challenger for Beyond Utopia, even though I still think that's winning, because I think 20 Days in Maripol might be the more timely documentary, but we'll have to see. Outside of that, not a whole lot to report on this category as always. Best International Feature, though, is a little bit more interesting. So, Society of the Snow has premiered, and this is a movie that, from what I hear, could potentially go very far. I've heard some rumblings that there is a world where Netflix really campaigns this on the same level as All Quiet on the Western Front last year, and it shows up in picture and potentially a bunch of tech categories. Now, from what I understand, it is a visual spectacle, but they don't always go for foreign films in a big way. All Quiet was the exception. Or was it? Was it the start of something new? So I don't actually have Society of the Snow predicted to get any nominations outside of International Feature, but you'll see I have it in my 6 through 10 range a lot because I'm really just trying to keep an eye out for it, just in case it does happen. Outside of that, there's really not a ton of major breakthroughs in this category. Although The Monk and the Gun, which is my number 9, apparently that's from the same director as Lunana, A Yak in the Classroom. So again, just keeping an eye on that one, just in case it becomes something big. Best Animated Feature, there has been a little bit of a shakeup in this category. I've moved Elemental, which was not even in my top 5, is now all the way at number 3. This movie, it's really quite astonishing what has happened because I feel like myself and so many other people wrote it off when we first saw it, and getting the chance to watch it again recently on Disney Plus, I was like, you know what, maybe I was a little bit too harsh on it the first time. I still think it's flawed, but I also do respect it, and I do think it has a lot of charm, and I think that there are enough people really gunning for this that I'm really starting to believe that the nomination can happen. I don't think it has a shot at the win, but I think the nomination is very much in the cards. Now, Wish, I don't know if if the embargo for that has officially dropped as of this recording, but from everything I've seen about it, I have no reason to believe that it's not going to be a big hit. Although I do have to question the short film Once Upon a Studio was released on ABC, and then it was on Disney Plus. And I can't help but wonder, why not just show it in front of Wish? I don't know if it's gonna show in front of Wish, but it seems like the obvious move because that whole short film is just an homage to the legacy of Disney. And it feels like this movie is also an homage to that. I don't know, it seems like it would go together so well because this whole movie is just a legacy piece for Disney's 100th anniversary. At any rate, I do expect it to be good, and I do expect it to get nominated. Nimona has dropped down, unfortunately. It does feel like when the movie premiered, people were talking about it for like a hot second, and then people stopped talking about it. And I really hope that that conversation can keep going because it is a great film, and I do hope people bring it back up again once we start getting to the Critics Awards, which are going to start very, very soon. Now, I've decided to move out Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget because based on early reviews, it's fine, it's nothing horrible, and Aardman has been known to get nominated in the past, but because it's Netflix and because Netflix also has Nimona, I think they're going to pivot. They're going to focus more of their attention on that movie instead of Chicken Run. But it's still very much in the conversation. And The Peasants might be a potential more adult thing that could be on the edge of getting nominated as well. Yeah, this category is still looking very interesting. And not to spoil things too much, but as of right now, this is the only nomination that I have across the Spider-Verse getting. I have decided, rather unfortunately, to take it out of everything. Much like Pinocchio, it was so strong for so many categories for a while, and then it sort of fell flat. But I still think it has a narrative. We just have to wait and see what it can do in those other categories. Now, for Best Sound, not a whole lot has changed. I've swapped Poor Things in Color Purple a little bit, and I've added Society of the Snow, but there are a few things to say about some of these movies, but I think I would rather say them in some later categories. So, including a Best Original Song. So we have a little bit of news about this category because the Hollywood Music and Media nominations have been announced. So we know some of the songs. We know, for example, that Color Purple has a song called Keep It Movin'. And apparently that song is performed by Halle Bailey and co-written by her. So there is a good amount of narrative behind that because she's really a hot star right now. And I do think, I can assume if the movie is a Best Picture contender, that the song is certainly a contender as well. Now, another new song that we found out about is A World of Your Own from Wonka. And I do think that this song, I don't know. I don't know how well the movie is going to do overall. It is interesting that the trailer has tried to hide the fact that it's a musical, kind of like the Mean Girls trailer that just dropped out and is, I know it's not contending for this year, but is just baffling to me. So, yeah, not a whole lot to add other than we know what the songs are, but I still think What Was I Made For is going to win this category. For Best Original Score, okay, so a big update, I have decided to put Elemental in the top 5, and I was hesitant on this for a while because when I first saw the movie, I just didn't know if I felt the same way about the score as a lot of people seemed to, but I saw it again, and the score did stand out to me more on a rewatch. I do like, obviously, I like Thomas Newman a lot. I think he really should have an Oscar by now, and people are going to bang the drum for this. He was nominated for Passengers. The tricky thing, too, is that Across the Spider-Verse is also here. And my gut says they're probably only going to nominate one animated film. But if they do, Elemental will probably get that spot. But maybe Across the Spider-Verse is more well-liked across the board. No pun intended. So, I don't know. As of the moment, at this moment, I'm giving Thomas Newman a little bit of a leg up because I think that in a lot of like predictions, people have Elemental as high as third place because they're so confident that Thomas Newman is going to get on because he gets on for everything. Yeah, so not much else to say about that. Keeping an eye on Elemental and Spider-Verse in this category. For visual effects, okay, so speaking of taking Spider-Verse out of a category, I think I heard that the Spider-Verse has less visual effects shots than you might think, and most of the technology that is showcased in that film was created for the original, which is a bit of a bummer because I was really, really hoping that this was gonna be an animated film that broke into visual effects because people love the visual look of that movie. But yeah, and for the record, I'm not crazy about having Little Mermaid in that 5th slot either, but that was another one that I was just on my 6 through 8 it was one that was just on the outskirts of getting nominated before, and I'm like, you know what? They go for Disney a lot. The visual effects are very showy and in your face. Why not? I I honestly don't know what to do about this category. I do feel confident about Dungeons and Dragons getting in, but I just don't know what else is going to happen. I don't think it's Oppenheimer. So we really will have to wait and see with this category. It's just so weak. And in terms of winning, yeah, I know Poor Things is more subtle, but it is a Best Picture contender, and I don't know if how many people even saw the creator. On opening weekend, it made less than Saw and the Paw Patrol movies, so I don't know how many people are really going to go to bat for that. A part of me still thinks that Guardians of the Galaxy could pull off an upset win just to be like, hey, yeah, Marvel, let's finally give Marvel a VFX award. But I don't know. And speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy, I have added that into my makeup and hairstyling. I was, for some reason, I was really uh, procrastinating on seeing Guardians of the Galaxy, and I was available for a long time, and I was just like, I don't know, just not on a Marvel kick. But I saw it, and it was fun, and it has some very flashy visual effects and makeup. And apparently, I read this after the fact, Guardians of the Galaxy set the record for the most amount of prosthetics used in a movie, beating the previous record, which was The Grinch, the 2000 Grinch movie that won Best Makeup. So because of that, I do think Guardians of the Galaxy can get nominated. And also, another movie I saw this past month was Naiad, and I think there's a very good chance that can get nominated because the stuff that they do to Annette Bening's face and body to show her wounds is very effective. Now, I don't know how well the movie is going to be received overall, but I think it's certainly on the precipice. And Golda also has showing makeup, but I feel like that movie is going to be less liked and more divisive. So I really can't say how well that's going to do. For best costume design, the top five is exactly the same. Some minor adjustments in the 6 through 10, but yeah, this is one of those instances where you're just going to have to pause it because I really don't have anything to say. Best production design. Again, no changes. This is one of those things where it was just really, really difficult for me and funny to be going through because I was just not looking at this guild at all, looking at all the films, going through my head, and then looking back and no change was made. So, sorry if you were expecting a change here. I still think Barbie and Poor Things are probably going to split the production design and costume design categories. I think in any other year, any of these movies would have won both, but they have the misfortune of going up against each other. Now, in Best Cinematography, has there been a change? Okay, I did put Oppenheimer ahead of Killers of the Flower Moon, just barely. This was something that I debated for a while. I did see Killers of the Flower Moon, and while I still think it could win cinematography, I'm not super confident that it will, and I have begun to see more and more of the argument for Oppenheimer in this category. But maybe it could be either Poor Things or Maestro, because both films have very flashy looking trailers. And the reason why I added Zone of Interest into the top five is because of some of the things I hear about the cameras being like hidden in the house, and like the director didn't want the actors to know where the cameras were. I think there is an interesting narrative behind that, so I have that getting nominated. Now for film editing, okay, so I have the same top three, but I've moved Holdovers in at number 4 because I think that makes a certain amount of sense given what I know about the movie. I'm going to see it very, very soon. I don't live near a whole lot of great theaters, unfortunately. Also, I have been insanely busy the past month with community theater, so I haven't gotten the opportunities to see a lot of these movies. But I promise you, by this time next time, I will have seen the Holdovers and possibly a lot more movies. I saw Killers of the Flower Moon, I saw Naiad, I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and I saw something else that I'll bring up in just a bit. But okay, I've added Holdovers, and I've also added American Fiction. I don't know why, I just have this feeling about the way that movie is edited that this could be a potential good category for that movie to show up in. And now, for Best adapted screenplay, speaking of American fiction, I have that in the number 2 position, right next to Poor Things, even though Killers of the Flower Moon was my 2 for a while. Okay, this top 4 is really interesting because I think any of them could conceivably win. So Poor Things, because, spoiler alert, I'm still thinking that's in a good position to win picture, I feel like I should probably predict whatever is winning picture to also win screenplay, unless I think American Fiction could just take screenplay, because that is the sort of crowd pleaser that it does make a certain amount of sense and it's about a writer, so I could see that happen. Now, Killers of the Flower Moon, there is the narrative there about how they changed the perspective of the original book to make it less of a white savior narrative, but as I'll get to in a minute, there is criticism that the movie is still just about the white people and not about the victims of this tragic circumstance. So, yeah, I don't know if I can see that winning, and I don't know if I can see Oppenheimer winning because I'm not on board the Oppenheimer is winning picture train for reasons that I've explained in the past. And then I just switched out Zone of Interest and All of Us Strangers in that 5th slot. Still not a lot to say here. Now, in original screenplay, okay, yeah, I did change the last slot so that it would be Anatomy of a Fall instead of Air. Still not confident that Anatomy of a Fall is getting into picture, but I don't know. I just don't know if I fully buy that Air is going to return and that Air is going to be this big contender. I don't know. It's tough. It's legitimately tough between those two for the 5th and 6th slots. But I don't know if I can see any of the others getting into that screenplay slot. Now, for Best Supporting Actor, this is interesting because, again, the top 4 is very striking, and there's a couple of different people who could fit in that number 5 position. And this might actually be a good time to tell you that one of the exercises that I did was I went over, basically I made predictions for Golden Globe, SAG, Critics' Choice, and BAFTA, and I tried to think about what sort of things those guilds would normally go for. And then after I did that, I looked at those predictions and tried to make Oscar predictions based off of that. And it's an interesting strategy. I'm not sure if I would recommend you go for it, but I'm just, hold on, in real time I'm going to pull up my supporting actor predictions. So basically I have De Niro, Downey, Ruffalo getting nominated at all 4 major precursors, and I also have Gosling getting nominated at all 4 major precursors, but with a bit of an asterisk because I think the Golden Globes are going to nominate him in lead actor in a comedy. And then the last slot is tricky because I have Willem Dafoe getting on, I think, almost everywhere except SAG, and then I think the SAG slot is going to go to Dominic Sessa, and I also think Charles Melton is going to get in a few places. This one is tricky. I will openly admit that. I think the last slot, I feel like a lot of people are going to be predicting Dafoe. Dafoe is going to get a majority of the precursors, but for some reason I'm holding out for Dominic Sessa. I just feel like he, in a Lucas Hedges way, he's the young newcomer, or even in the Stephanie Hsu way last year of, a lot of people are underestimating their chances because they're so new, but they're a crucial part of a movie that everybody loves. So I think it does make a certain amount of sense that he would get this nomination, even though Dafoe is right there. I'm ultimately going to go with Sessa, and poor Charles Melton and poor John McEnroe and poor everyone else. It's a really tight category. But as of right now, I don't know if I can see any of the top 4 missing, and in the 5th slot, Dominic Sessa just makes sense to me. And then we come to Best Supporting Actress, and this was maybe the category that I was really tearing my hair out about. I still have Danielle Brooks at number 1 for reasons that I explained last time, even though we don't know how Color Purple is going to be received. I just think the fact that she's playing the Oprah role and Oprah is going to be campaigning for her as a producer on the film really, really helps her chances. Divine Joy Randolph, I think from people who have actually seen the film, people are like, yeah, I mean, she's good, but she's sort of a placeholder, and I don't feel like people are super confident in this performance winning. So I have Brooks for now. It feels so weird that Emily Blunt is like a solid number 3 because that would not have been my assumption after seeing the movie, but she just is because a lot of the other women in this category are in maybe a weaker position. And I do feel pretty confident about Ferreira, even though she's probably realistically number 5. I just feel like people are really going to go for her because she has the monologue of the year. And then that last slot could be a couple of different people. So I have Viola Davis for now. And my justification for this is, again, using the system I use, Davis is definitely going to get SAG. I feel like she's definitely going to get Globe. So I feel like she's so well liked that she's going to be in the conversation. But someone else who could very easily get SAG and Globe is Jodie Foster. I saw her movie, and I definitely think she has a better chance of getting nominated than Annette Bening. I think she rises above the script, to be fair, and she's more likable than Bening is in the movie. I think people are going to be more willing to reward Foster's performance. Penelope Cruz is interesting, though, because I still haven't seen the movie, but from what I understand, Cruz is one of those. She is clearly the best thing about the movie. And voters who see the movie are going to want to reward her. She's someone who's been nominated 4 times before. Oscar voters clearly love her. So we really shouldn't write her out. And yet a part of me is like, how well is the movie going to do overall? Is it going to work? And then I have this really, really weird feeling about Rachel McAdams in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I can't fully put my finger on why. This is one of those performances from early in the year where there's enough people saying, it's never gonna happen, but wouldn't it be cool? And sometimes just enough passion can emerge that it actually becomes a thing. I could see her getting like a Critics' Choice nomination, possibly even Globe, and then we know she's solidly in the race. But I just don't know. I think more people need to be talking about the movie and her, and there is a path to her. And I was seriously predicting, am I going to make her my big No Guts, No Glory? I'm going to have her at number 8 for now, but for the record, I very much think this can happen. And speaking of No Guts, No Glory, in Best Actor, I've decided to move Jeffrey Wright into my top 5 and take Colman Domingo out. So first of all, apologies to everybody outside the top 6. This is a very, very top-heavy field. It's clearly going to be one of these top 6. And I had this feeling for a while, and I think a lot of us did, where our Best Actor top 5 included Cooper, Giamatti, Murphy, DiCaprio, and Domingo. Not necessarily in that order, but then Jeffrey Wright, American Fiction, wins People's Choice Award at TIFF, and people are really talking about him, and suddenly they want to put him in the top 5, but they don't know who to take out. And I was seeing serious arguments that Giamatti or Murphy could be the shocking miss, and I don't think that can happen. I think both of those are solidly in. And I was, honest to God, thinking about taking out DiCaprio and being like, what if he's the shocking miss? Because when I saw Killers of the Flower Moon, my big problem with the movie was his character. I don't find that character relatable or sympathetic at all, and I feel like he's completely outshined by what Lily Gladstone is doing in that movie. So I don't think it's impossible that DiCaprio is the shocking miss, and I was this close to predicting it, but ultimately I think I went with the safer choice of taking out Domingo. And I only say that because Rustin is clearly not going to be a Best Picture nominee, whereas the top 5, I think, definitely are going to be Best Picture nominees. And yes, we can have lone acting nominations, we get those all the time, but with all of the top 5 movies so widely beloved, Rustin's probably is only contending for Domingo and maybe Song, but that's it. And we had this conversation about Daniel Deadweiler last year, and I do think Domingo is maybe in the conversation a little bit more because he's a more established actor than Deadweiler, and also his movie is not as difficult to watch regarding the subject matter. So I do think he's right there, and this is absolutely killing me. And honestly, I think the only reason I took out Domingo is because I think people would really, really come after me if I took out DiCaprio instead. But maybe we can transition to this. The real reason why I just couldn't give myself to take out DiCaprio of the top 5 is because I think Lily Gladstone is winning Best Actress. Okay, so let me explain my reasoning behind this, because I know most people are going to have Emma Stone in their top spot, and yes, I have yet to see Poor Things, and I really should not be this quick to jump to conclusions. I also not seen Carey Mulligan's film either. But here's the thing. I was not a terribly big fan of Killers of the Flower Moon, and I get what Scorsese is trying to do, and I admire him for trying to tell this story, and I admire him for basically admitting at the end of the film that he's not the person who should be telling the story, but that someone needs to. I admire all of that, but the movie is difficult to watch because of the brutality of the violence that's depicted, and also because it really wants us to sympathize with DiCaprio's character, who's so complicit in it. And I walked away from the film with the same reaction that a lot of people have, which is the movie should have been told solely from her point of view. And yet, even though she leaves you wanting more, you're left wanting more from the character, you're still so mesmerized by the actress, and every single moment she's on screen. And I understand the lead supporting argument. Like, in terms of screen time percentage, this is maybe more of a supporting performance, and yet it's one of those performances, you know, the way people talk about Hopkins and Silence of the Lambs, and even when they're not on screen, you're thinking about them. It's like that. She really does pull you in every moment, often without any dialogue, just with a simple glance. It's a really, really powerful performance, and this is a movie starring two of the biggest movie stars of the past 50 years, DiCaprio and De Niro, and all you can think about when you leave the movie is her. And so, I think she can win. Now, the first major televised ceremony is the Golden Globes, and when Emma Stone, she's gonna win Actress in a Comedy, we know this, but Actress in a Drama is either gonna be in Gladstone or Mulligan or possibly Huller, but I'm gonna bet on Gladstone. And when Gladstone gives her speech and she moves everybody to tears because she really has stuff to talk about and she really has important things to say, I do think Emma Stone, her campaign from then on is going to look a lot like what we saw with Cate Blanchett last year of, oh, I don't really need to win another one. I think Emma Stone fully recognizes how historic a win for Lily Gladstone would be, and yeah, it's hard to bet against Emma Stone. I get that. I get that what she's doing in the movie is very big and very transformative and very physical, but I just keep going back to Gladstone and her story and her performance. It's really so outstanding to watch. I know at least I'm going to be rooting for her all season long. Now, I do basically have the same top 5 that I had at this time last year. And this time last month, sorry, a little bit tired. And Barrino, Greta Lee, Annette Bening, they're all right there. Even Kaylee Spaney and Tiana Taylor, who's getting some critics' notices. I admire that they're all in this race, but this is a very, very competitive field. And as of right now, I'm feeling pretty strong about the top 5. I understand a lot of people do not have Margot Robbie in there, but I really feel that Barbie is going to be a top contender. And Sandra Hüller, I think, is... Part of me almost wants to take her out, but I feel like I would get crucified for doing that, so I'm going to leave her in. Fantasia Barrino, I'm so sorry. As soon as people see her movie, if she's great in it, there's going to be a big rush to get her in the top 5, and I don't know who we're going to have to take out to do that. Yeah, it's tight. It's tough. Now, For Best Achievement in Directing, I don't think there's been any major shakeups. I still believe this is the top 5. Yeah, the only shakeup that happened was I put Cord Jefferson in at number 9 because maybe American Fiction will really take off. But since there's nothing major to report on here, let's just skip right to Best Picture. So at this point, I am really, really eager to see Poor Things. Because I want to know whether or not this can actually win. And I've heard people say that it can win, but I've also heard people say that it's a very weird movie. And we've seen weird win. Obviously, Everything Everywhere last year, but even stuff like Shape of Water and Birdman, sometimes the Academy does like weird. But are they really going to go for weird and existential 2 years in a row? Now, I don't think it's going to be something like Oppenheimer or Killers of the Flower Moon because it's never the obvious one. But I will admit Killers, even though I wasn't personally a huge fan of the movie, it probably does have a better chance than Oppenheimer because it is about something, because it is shedding a light on this important part of history. However, there are these discussions about was Scorsese the right person to tell this story? And even though Scorsese admits in the final scene of the movie that he probably wasn't, I think those conversations are still going to apply. And I read an interesting article recently about how a lot of these movies are going to have issues regarding who should this person be telling the story. And you look at Poor Things and you look at Barbie, and these two movies are actually kind of similar in the sense that they're both these fantasy sci-fi stories about a naive, childish woman discovering the cruelty of the patriarchy and taking it, and both movies are very scolding of the patriarchy. However, it's worth pointing out that Barbie is directed, conceived, and co-written by a woman, whereas Poor Things is directed by a man, written by a man, and based on a book by a man. And that fact alone should not discount Poor Things, but when people are comparing these two movies so closely, then there might be some sort of pushback against Poor Things as the frontrunner, and potentially more people arguing towards Barbie. And I said this last month, I'm going to say it again, there is this strange part of me that is like, should I just put Barbie at number 1? Why do I feel like that's not a crazy scenario? And I think I'm trying to be somewhat realistic and also trying to maybe being a little conservative about the way people are going to react to these predictions. But I don't know, I just feel like it's possible. Poor Things I still have at number 1 for now, but I'm right on the edge of making that switch. But like I said, Poor Things, should a man be telling this story? Killers of the Flower Moon, should a white man be telling this story? Even American Fiction, which is this satire that people really like about black stories being made for white audiences, one can argue that the film is an example of the very type of story it's satirizing. And so there's all these discussions about almost all of these movies. There's some sort of controversy. There's something to get upset about. Oddly, the only movie in this top 10 that I can't imagine amassing any type of controversy is Past Lives, because it's such a lovely movie. But I still don't think that can win. It'd be lovely if that won Best Picture, but is it going to be too small to break through? It is exciting to have this much information where almost all of the movies except Color Purple have been widely seen, and yet we still really don't know what's going to win Best Picture. We still don't know which of these movies is really going to take off. And for the record, Color Purple, yes, I'm aware that there were early test screenings and that the reaction was a little bit mixed. I have learned to not take the early test screenings too seriously because basically the movie's not ready yet. And if the audience has a problem with the movie, there's still time for that problem to get fixed. I will say the poster is terrible, but I don't really want to use that to reflect on the quality of the movie. But it does seem like the top 10 feels pretty secure to me, because looking at 11 through 15, I don't really know which of those are going to break in. Society of the Snow maybe, but I don't know. I'd like to believe Spider-Verse still has a shot, but I don't know how many other nominations it can get besides this and animated feature. So, mm, I really don't know. The only real updates that we got were the Gotham nominations, which they're always fun, but they don't exactly prove a whole lot, and you can't point to the fact that a certain thing isn't there as reason. Hopefully, if Past Lives wins Best Picture, that'll take it. Well, we know Past Lives is going to win at Gotham's, at least it should, and that should keep it in the conversation, the greater conversation, for a little bit. There's also some people that are nominated in the lead and supporting categories like Jeffrey Wright or Divine Troy Randolph. We'll see how well that goes. I think the only other thing that's really happened. Oh yeah, the SAG strike. The SAG strike is now over. Thank you. It would have been really, really awkward to go through this whole awards ceremony with the actors not being able to campaign for themselves. But now we know that they will, and I'm really excited to see these actors come out and start talking about the movies and start campaigning. I do think Downey Jr. is going to really start campaigning for supporting actor. And it will be interesting to see what a lot of these campaigns look like and what actors maybe rub people the wrong way on the campaign trails. But outside of that, yeah, good to know we're going to have a somewhat normal award season and we're not going to have to change everything. But yeah, in terms of next month, I'll try to get another Oscar prediction video out just before the Golden Globes. I don't think I'll be predicting Golden Globe nominations this year because the fact that they have six nominees per category does kind of defeat the purpose because it's hard to even know. Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier I made these charts for myself about the actors that are nominated, all these things. And for Golden Globes, it's like, well, this almost doesn't really matter because every actor can get into Golden Globes, especially in the comedy and drama categories. There's room for everyone. Also, the creation of that best box office movie or whatever it's called is just like, oh, you just really want ratings, don't you? I don't know. Hopefully this was enough to tide you over for now. But yeah, I'm exhausted. I hope you enjoy. Bye.